back to the How To podcast series. My name is Dave. Happy to have you here. We are looking at the Appleseed series, 10 episodes. This is part 2, and it's all around the idea of creating impact for your podcast. And today we're going to be looking at crafting a compelling message for your podcast episodes. Again, it's all about the apples. And no, not the one that we all have to pay for and cost a lot of money and they sell us new tech every chance they can. No, these are actual apples here on the How to Podcast series. Here we go. So you're going to hear this quote many, many times, and I hope it sinks deep, deep into you, into your heart and into your soul, your mind, and all of that, that you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can't count the number of apples in a seed. And we're talking about how our podcast can impact people far beyond what we even imagine when we go to record our episodes, realizing that this content can live on into the future and impact people on a growing and an amazing way that we never really anticipated, to be quite honest. And we want that impact to last. We want it to be sustainable, and we want people to connect with what we're talking about on our show. So again, today we're looking at how we can craft a compelling message for our podcast episodes. And we're going to be looking at we have 3 tips for you that we're going to be talking about, 3 actionable tips, but also getting a little bit deep into how we can create a clear message for our podcast. Are you ready? Okay, I'm ready. You're ready. Here we go. Crafting a compelling message for your podcast episodes is crucial for engaging your audience and making a lasting impact. My challenge to you in this episode is to look at how you can develop a clear central message for your podcast, but also for your podcast episodes. Your central message serves as an anchor point for your entire episode. It's the main takeaway that you want your listeners to remember to create an impactful central message. As we look at crafting a compelling message for our podcast episodes, we need to focus on the specificity of our message. We need to narrow down our topic, and we have to have a specific angle or a theme to what we're talking about. We understand that as a podcaster, this all takes time and effort. This is not just flipping on the microphone and let's see what happens. I don't know what to talk about. Do you want to know? I don't know what to talk about. Let's just see what happens. No. We need to actually have a plan here. Avoid being too broad. Just like when you create your podcast, the same mentality needs to come towards your podcast episode. Be sure to narrow your focus and understand and know exactly what you're going to talk about before you come to the microphone. One of my pet peeves is when I listen to a podcast and the podcaster just seems to be just talking, and they don't even know where they're going. And they get on tangents, they go off on different paths, and you don't even know. And then they say, oh, I should probably edit that out, and they don't. And you're like, why are you not honoring my time as a listener? Stick to your topic and let's keep going. I'm here for that. Being specific is never a bad thing. Instead of talking about something in general terms, the more you can narrow it down and speak to that specific thing, the better for your audience. So don't be afraid to be specific. And also craft a concise statement that kind of summarizes your episode's main point. And I would suggest you do that before you record, not after. And the reason is you want to have it in your mind that you have a finish line. You know where you're going with your episode. You know what your main focus is. And you know you're going to hit the points you wanted to hit before you step to the microphone. This should help guide your content and keep you on track throughout the episode, especially if you tend to wander, especially if you get distracted in your podcast recordings. You can always edit those things out, and I really would encourage you to do that. But having a concise statement and as a very specific focus for your episode will definitely keep you on course and help you to reach your goal. But also the other thing is to consider your audience's needs. And make sure you align your central message with your audience's interests and the reason why they came to the episode, the reason why they press play on your podcast. What problem do they have? And what solution are you offering and that you're addressing as a value to your listener? It should all be wrapped up in this one clear central message. The other thing that is really helpful when we're looking at crafting a compelling message for our podcast episodes is to use storytelling. Storytelling adds a human touch to our podcast that AI can't duplicate, by the way, and helps your message resonate with your listeners on a personal level. So here's how to effectively use storytelling. Use anecdotes. Share personal anecdotes or stories related to the topic. Personal stories create a connection with your audience and make your content relatable. Go back to episode 76 of the How to Podcast series, where we talk about how to deal with a hater, and I share some personal stories from my background, things that actually happened to me, and the content's resonating. There's people listening to that episode still, which is amazing. Now that we're up to episode 137, all the way back there, people are still listening to that episode. So use stories from your own personal life. Again, AI doesn't have a personal life that you can pull into your episode to humanize the content that you're talking about. Maybe use case studies and examples. Use real-life case studies or articles or information that you pull into your podcast to help illustrate your message. By showcasing how others have experienced your message also impacts your topic and gives credibility to the relevance of what you're talking about. So pull in those extra sources. Those external sources are great. They kind of resonate and build up your content and kind of give a foundation. So it's not just your opinion. It's not just what you believe, but here's someone else who also is on the same path on this topic, and this is their thoughts. It's really good. And make sure you shout them out as well, that you've included them in your podcast. The other thing it also pulls in is an emotional appeal. As you incorporate your emotions into your stories, emotions help your listeners to connect with your message and remember it better. So don't just read to your audience, but connect with them. Let them know and let them feel you and your emotions in the moment, in the story, as you bring this to light. Okay, so here's some actionable steps for you. 3, actually, around crafting a compelling message for your podcast episodes. 1, develop a story bank. I love using my email. I email anything that catches my eye, catches my interest. I heard it on a podcast. I read it in a book. I saw it on TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, Instagram. I just email the link to myself. Put the top in the subject line, put topic, and give it a basic idea of what the topic is about. And keep those and put them in a file. Keep them in your email box and just put them in as topic ideas. And that way, when you come to your podcast, you can sort through, you can search, and you can find what you wanted to talk about in your episode by just documenting it and keeping it. Develop a story bank. Create a repository of stories, anecdotes, examples relevant to your podcast title and episode. Whenever you're preparing an episode, you can draw from this bank and to make more engaging content. So that's number 1. Number 2 is to practice the rule of 3. You might have heard this before. Structure your central message with 3 main points. Kind of what I'm doing here. The human brain tends to remember information in 3s, making your message more memorable. And number 3, in my rule of 3, is craft compelling introductions and conclusions. Introduction to your podcast. Start with a great hook that grabs your listener's attention. It could be a thought-provoking, it could be a question, it could be a surprising fact, a teaser of what's to come. Start off with a bang. Don't just kind of roll into your episodes as if the conversation's already been started before you hit record and we're all trying to figure out what you're talking about. Start off with a great intro for your episodes. As well, Leave with a great conclusion. Summarize your central message, the key takeaways. Always reiterate the value your listeners will gain from applying what they've heard in this podcast. And by developing a clear message and by using storytelling effectively, you can create podcast episodes that captivate your audience's attention and leave a lasting impact. We don't want people just to hear our episode. We want them to resonate with our episode. Remember, consistency in applying these techniques and continuously improving your storytelling skills will contribute to your podcast's long-term success. Develop a story bank, practice the rule of 3, craft compelling intros and conclusions to your podcast. All of these things are part of your apple seed, and knowing that your impact is going to go far beyond what you can count and measure. Show up for great episodes every time as a host, and your audience will come back episode after episode, week after week, on a continuous basis because you are showing up for them. They'll show up for you. And that is your apple for today. Looking forward to the next one. Part 3 is coming up around our Apple Seed series here on the How to Podcast series. Thank you for being here. Go cut open an apple and see how many seeds you can count today. Thanks for being part of the show.